Just register. Okay, we're just about to start the meeting now. Okay, we just. Okay. Ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Rana, Chair of the committee. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm, please leave the building via the spiral staircase and the main reception door. Once outside, turn left onto Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, you will be guided to the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel. The comment function is not available. The Council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during the webcast in accordance with this data retention policy. Anyone seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the room, you are consenting to your image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting or training purposes. The meeting agenda is available on the Council's website. Around these tables sit the committee members who will be taking decisions on the items before them. Officers of the Council are also in attendance, and I invite them to introduce themselves now. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jess Tamplin, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, I'm Siraj Chowdhury, Head of Governance.
Good evening, I'm Jean McPherson. I am the Group Manager for the Gatwick Northern Runway GCO.
Good evening, I'm Val Cheeseman, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. Item 1 is for apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Chair. Councillor Mullins is unable to make it.
Okay, thank you. Items 2 and 3 are disclosures of interest and lobbying. Item 2 is disclosures of interest and item 3 is lobbying declarations, which we will take together. I will call committee members name one by one to declare any interest or lobbying in relation to any of the items. Please also declare if you have visited any of the sites. So we have Councillor Ashraf.
I haven't been lobbied on any of the items. I have no interest to declare and haven't visited any of the sites.
Thank you. Councillor Bidwell.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare, haven't been lobbied and haven't visited the site.
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. Councillor Cheriton.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I have not been lobbied and unfortunately I haven't been able to visit the sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you. Good evening. Nothing to declare, nothing to state.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Good evening. I have no declarations to declare. I haven't been lobbied and I haven't visited any of the sites.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Good evening. I've not been lobbied. I've no interest to declare and I've not visited any of the sites this week.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Evening. I've got no interest to declare. I've not been lobbied and I've not visited any sites.
Thank you. Councillor McWarley.
Good evening. Coming on.
The next one.
Good evening. I've not been lobbied. I've got no interest to declare, and I've not visited any of the sites.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Good evening. I've not been lobbied. I have no interest to declare and I've not visited any of the sites.
Thank you. And Councillor Russell.
I've got no interest to declare, I've not been lobbied and I haven't visited the sites either. Thank you.
Thank you. I also, for myself, I have not visited anything and I have nothing to declare. So item 4 is the approval of the minutes of a last meeting held on 1st April 2025. Does the committee agree that the minutes are an accurate record of a meeting? Agreed. Thank you. So as we have speakers on only one of the items, I'm going to move this item so it is considered first. So we will now move on to agenda item 8, Tree Preservation Order 01/2025. Oak tree at 17 Harvey Close. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This is agenda item 8 and relates to an oak tree at 17 Harvey Close. This report relates to a provisional tree preservation order served on the oak tree at 17 Harvey Close, Broadfield. And you'll see from the screen and my cursor, the oak tree is marked with a red spot there. So that's it in context from the aerial view. I'll just pop up a location plan. I can enlarge that a little bit. Oops, no. Again, the tree is T1 on this drawing. This is Harvey Close, extending down off Creasy's Drive, and it's in the rear garden of the property, number 17. And just in context here, again, this is the oak tree here. That's looking up Harvey Close, that one, and this is from Creasy's Drive, sort of looking into the road from the junction, and this is the oak tree again in the middle of the picture. So I say the location tree I've just shown you, and the tree came to the attention of the council after a request was received to have it felled, and a provisional order was served and tree assessment undertaken. In this case, as it was understood the tree was under imminent threat of felling, the tree owner received a phone call from the tree officer prior to receipt of the formal TPO papers to give warning that the provisional order had been served. The tree owner has objected to the TPO, and their reasons are summarised in section 5.4 of the officer's report, and also are set out in full in Appendix 1. The officer response to those reasons are summarised in section 6 of the officer's report. The officers considered that the tree has good amenity value and an attractive form, making a good contribution to the landscaped character of the Broadfield estate, and has good visibility from nearby roads. While there appears to have been some misunderstanding over the status of the tree now has a provisional protected status from the order, which was served to protect it from being felled. The service of the order does not preclude future works to the tree to ensure it is managed appropriately within the garden to provide clearance and light to the adjoining houses, and the recommendation is to confirm the order. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. There are 2 speakers registered in regard to this item. Please, will Elizabeth Dunster come to the speakers table? You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Elizabeth Dunster. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this matter. We moved into our home 33 years ago as the original tenant, and there was a mature oak tree in the rear garden. Over the course of our tenancy, the tree has grown considerably, and roughly every 3 to 5 years, this growth has caused significant damage to our garden, which has cost us several of thousands of pounds to rectify. On each occasion we have approached the council to complain about the damage caused by the tree, we were told there is a TPO on the tree and nothing they could do. We had to turf the whole garden when we moved in as it was just mud. We had to re-turf again as the tree had sucked the life out of the grass. We then had to slab the top half of the garden. Then the slab started lifting. One of the 2 small walls collapsed and the other is leaning, waiting to fall. We then decided to fit false grass top to bottom as nothing would grow, and lay yet another patio as well as replace our sheds for a 3rd time. At no time over this whole period have we been offered any help by the council. 18 months ago, our neighbour threatened to put nails into the tree to kill it off, as she believed it was damaging her garden too. We contacted our housing manager, and after 18 months of backwards and forwards between different departments over this dispute, which is still ongoing, we were told in January of this year the tree did not have a TPO on it and never had. We received confirmation of this fact on the 7th of February, then having previously been told by George Frame that the tree was our responsibility, we are not the house owners, we decided that for our health and well-being, as well as our neighbours, the tree should come down. We arranged to have the tree removed, then in our opinion did the right thing, and on the 12th of February I contacted the Council Planning Department to let them know. I was told I needed to speak to Russell Spurrell, who wasn't available but would call me back. Later that day I received the call from Russell, who told me he had slapped a TPO on the tree without any investigation or discussion with me to seek to understand why we were looking to undertake the work on the tree. We believe that the TPO was placed on the tree as an immediate emotional reaction to our plans, and to make matters worse, when I asked what would have happened if I'd cut the tree down the day before, he said nothing would, as it didn't have a TPO on it. We believe that if the tree was felled, it would not have any significant negative impact on the amenity of the area. This tree does not enhance the local environment, as it sits within our garden behind a 3-metre wall, which is partially cannot be seen by the public. It therefore does not add to the aesthetic value of the landscape or contribute any character to the area. We are seeking to have the TPO removed, as it was applied retrospectively without clear or sound reasoning and without due reasonable process. We have been wrongly advised over our 33-year tenancy that the tree had a TPO. Had we correctly been advised by the council, we would have been able to have the tree attended to in order to avoid it becoming the bigger problem it is today. It has never been about shading or leaf dropping, but about damage already caused and the obvious damage it will continue to cause in the future. And we believe this liability lays with the tree and subsequently the landowner. This tree has caused nothing but stress, sleepless nights, ill health over the past 30 years, and therefore we would ask that family life and well-being, as well as protection of property, be taken into consideration when making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Dunster. Please will Councillor Irvine come to the speaker's table. As ward councillor, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I may well repeat some of what Mrs Dunster has said, but that's neither here nor there, really. I was first appointed to the Planning Committee way back in 1986, and since then, over time, I've served around 20 years on the committee, including 5 or 6 as chair. I say that because in all that time, I must have considered dozens of tree preservation orders, and I don't think I've ever objected to one. I'd also like to make it clear that I appreciate the value of trees and the positive contribution they make to Crawley's environment. But I think this application is different. I've consulted the gov.uk guidance on objecting to TPOs, and it appears that, unlike most other planning applications, there is no limit to the type of objections that can be made. They are not bound by planning law. I visited the garden and seen for myself the tree, and here are my reasons for supporting the objection. Firstly, because it is a large tree in a smallish garden, it is sucking the life out of the garden. Nothing can be planted. Everything, lawn included, is artificial because of the tree's roots. Secondly, every time the householders put up a shed, eventually they have to put up a new one because the tree's roots end up destroying the base of the shed. Thirdly, it could be argued that the tree doesn't actually add a great deal of amenity to the area because much of it is hidden behind a wall, and the nearest of the tree does block out some of the householders' light. Next, there is the stress, which Mrs Dunster has described and which is also described in the letter of objection, the stress that this has caused to the householders. And then, because it is a large tree, close to several houses, there's always the risk of branches or even the whole tree being blown down in a storm and injuring people and damaging property. In conclusion, I think this tree is just in the wrong place. A large tree in a small, confined space, no doubt a legacy from when the housing estate was designed and built. I remember reading in a planning document some years ago Crawley being described as, quote, an urban forest, and thank goodness for that. Surely, the possibility of one tree less isn't going to jeopardise that. And ask yourselves, as I've asked myself, is it fair that the householders should have to live under this stress? If you do ask yourself this question, I think you will come to the same conclusion as me. No, it is not fair, and I urge the committee not to grant the TPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. We will now move on to the debate. Committee members should raise their hand if they wish to speak. The officer will respond to queries one by one. Now open the floor to debate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a bit confused about the mess up between the resident was saying that she was told there was a TPO on it and then there wasn't a TPO on it. So I would like a little bit of an explanation about how that occurred. I'm also a bit confused. On the document, it says, which I've lost already, amenity land adjacent to the rear of the garden, whereas the resident has implied that it's inside the rear garden. So I would like, on the application on page 9 of the report, it says amenity land adjacent to the rear garden. So I'd like some clarification on that. And also confirmation that if a TPO was put on the tree, it doesn't prevent work from happening. It just means that we have oversight of any work that goes forward. Because it does seem to me that the resident who is living there actually wants the tree felled, and the TPO would protect the tree from felling, but it would not stop work being done to reduce it in size. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I tend not to like to dictate to people what they can do with trees within their garden. But the flip side is that I don't like to see nice specimen, big, large, mature, healthy trees felled. Councillor Jaggart has referenced if a TPO is on there, I know the answer. It does mean that works can be done, but they have to be applied for as a separate application if it has a TPO. That's my understanding. However, clearly, and I would hope all members could hopefully agree that the tree does appear to be too large and overly dominant for the size of garden that it's in, and is having a detrimental effect on the householders. So my instincts are that maybe, I think Councillor Irvine has helped to persuade me somewhat. My instincts are that actually maybe we shouldn't grant the TPO. But I do have a question, is if a TPO is granted, which doesn't stop, obviously it doesn't stop work being undertaken, but an application that has to be applied. Did I read somewhere it was 18 metres, the height of the tree? So officers nodding, so it's 18 metres. So realistically, what sort of, and I appreciate this is a little bit finger in the air, what scale of works would be likely to be approved to bring the tree down to a manageable and suitable size for the garden that it sits in? I appreciate there's a little bit of estimation there, but it's if it's just a tiny little trim that's allowed or is likely to be allowed, that is definitely going to influence my how I'll vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite the officers, Jean, to please respond now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rana. I'll respond to Councillor Jaggard and then Councillor Crowe in that order. So the explanation about the tree preservation order and its status, there seems to be some confusion about that. And to be honest, I think it says in the report we haven't been able to establish what happened with that. As is indicated in the report, the property is a council property. So we're not sure whether that information came from the housing side or the planning side. But certainly from the planning point of view, when it became aware that the tree wasn't protected, it was then that we looked at it under our duties as the local planning authority to decide whether or not it should be protected. So George Frame, the officer concerned, is the Amenity Services tree officer, and I don't believe he's with us anymore in terms of working. So, and obviously Russell Spurrell, who's been mentioned tonight is the planning arboricultural officer. So we've got a slight difference of personnel here. But as I say, I don't think that should detract really from the merits of considering whether or not this tree, is worthy of the order in its own right. The position is clearly now that it has a provisional order on it, and the decision you committee have to make tonight is whether to confirm that. So it's unfortunate that there's been this misunderstanding, but I'm not sure we can trace the history back to work out where that stems from. In terms of where the tree is, it's definitely within the rear garden of 17 Harvey Close, and that report reflects that. In fact, the location plan up on the screen shows that. I'll pop back up a photograph that will clarify that. So again, this is the view from the street. You see the wall and the tree behind. And yeah, sorry, TPO does not. Sorry, what was the third question, Councillor Jaggard?
Just to confirm that work can be carried out on the tree. TPO just prevents it being felled.
That's right. It doesn't prevent the occupier from making an application to carry out works to the tree. And I think Councillor Crowe asked what sort of reasonable works might be carried out. I'm going to add a massive disclaimer here that I'm not the tree officer. I'm one of the other planning officers, so it's not my area of expertise. But I would have thought on a tree of this size in the garden, it would be reasonable to consider a crown lift, which is where you lift the lower branches up to allow more light into the windows at the bottom. So perhaps something like 4 metres or a bit more, so that allows some light through from the rear garden outwards. That wouldn't affect the shape or form of the tree. And again, someone would have to assess the tree for its stability and form, but I would have thought there was going to be a few metres branch reduction from the crown all the way round. And that would be the normal sort of tree works for an oak tree. But I'm not going to give any dimensions because, as I say, I'm not the tree officer. But, yeah, obviously the situation of the tree in a smallish garden is a consideration, and obviously we'd want it to be managed appropriately for its size going forward, so that there is a balance between having the amenity of the tree in the surrounding area, but also ensuring that the occupiers have the ability to enjoy their rear gardens. So there's definitely some scope for some works to that tree to improve the situation for the occupants. So I think that's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. As I always do, I read the paperwork for this before coming to this meeting, and I think there's a, with due respect, the objection letter misrepresents what I'm seeing on the screen here. It says it's hidden by a 3-metre wall. I can't find the line now. And it's not, it doesn't have any amenity value and contribute to the setting. If you have a look, there's part of a line of trees, and it is a substantial tree. A 3-metre wall at the bottom of that is not going to affect your visibility of that tree. I just think it's a little bit disingenuous that the way it's worded on the paperwork. It is a substantial tree, and I can understand the difficulties the resident has in the garden. But it does, having a look on Street View, it does sort of form a row of trees, and to remove it would separate one tree off at the end. And if it's a healthy tree, I'm minded to support the application of the TPO because of the value it does add to that area. But it just doesn't seem to match the detail in the objection letter or what the resident has spoken about.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Is there any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Carr.
I don't know much about trees, but what I want to know is if they had not been told about the TPO, they could have carried out the work and they could have kept the tree to a reasonable size, but because I think the misinformation, I don't know where, how they got that information and who told them there was a TPO because of that. But now I think because of now there's a TPO, so now they have to do an application and now they have to go through all that. I think we need to look at this case and see where have we gone wrong and what's happened, and for it not to happen in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Russell.
Thank you. I'm looking at the size of that tree in relevance to the property. I've also heard what the residents have said about the damage that the tree is doing, not only to their property, but also to adjacent properties. I'm wondering here, and I'd accept guidance on this, whether if we accepted, this goes to something that Councillor Crowe said, if we accepted the TPO, are we able to give some kind of guidance or review on the amount of work that should really be done to that tree? It absolutely overpowers the house. And we can talk about the lower branches to allow light through, but that thing is, from this picture, it looks two and a half times the height of the house. And I'm guesstimating, if that was to come down, that's going to go through the roof. But that means, it tells me that it absolutely dominates it. Is it possible, are we able to, as a committee, to make a recommendation that should the TPO be granted, that a view be given as to substantial adjustments be made to that tree? That's the question.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Cheriton, please.
I find myself thank you. I find myself in a bit of a dilemma over this one. I entirely sympathise with the residents. I was, funny enough, in a similar situation, but with a eucalyptus tree, which one can have a little less sympathy for. I felt terribly torn, and actually it probably overstayed its welcome, because I really, like many of us on here, I think we really do not want to be chopping down healthy trees if we can help it, particularly oak trees, for a number of different reasons. It's not sentimental, there's some very good practical reasons as well. However, in my case, I finally decided interestingly enough, got some information from somebody at Kew Garden, just as it happens, who basically said, in the instance of the eucalyptus, get rid of it, she said, chop it down. It just sucks up water out the garden. Now, I don't think oaks fall in the same category for a variety of reasons, but I hear what the residents are saying, which is that it does essentially consume a lot of the resources in the garden to the extent nothing else can be grown, it causes damage and so on. The point being as well, the point where I'm getting to with this one as well, there was no other option in the case of the eucalyptus, because even if you opt, as some people have suggested, and I think it's a great idea, for like crown reduction and all the rest of it, it's still, there's a limit to how much work you can do on a tree without actually killing it off. That you can't go below a certain height in any one cutting. And I think even if you took like a third off that tree, which is what I read, I'm no expert, but what I read is about the maximum you can take off there without stressing the tree too much, it's still a significant sized tree. So I find myself in a great quandary over this one, because I can see the argument for felling, but I can see the argument for, I really strongly, viscerally object to the idea of cutting down a healthy oak tree. So I don't know where this leaves us. All I can say is that, in terms of is there an alternative? Can we cut back a little bit? I think the reality is that you'll find that even if you did that work, you'd still have a problematical tree for your resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheriton. Before I take any more questions, I'd like to go back to Jean, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to come back on the point Councillor Russell made about can we give guidance on the level of surgery and adjustments to the tree. And absolutely, as part of all the applications we receive for works to protected trees, that is the job of the tree officer to go out and assess whether the level of works are appropriate for a tree, whether what they want is acceptable, and not many times he will offer a different level of surgery perhaps, or something that might work better for the for the tree owner than perhaps what they've been suggested. And that is very much tailored to the species of the tree and whether they tolerate different forms of surgery. So there's other items on the agenda, for example, for pollarding. We wouldn't pollard an oak, but it's suitable for lots of other trees. So there are lots of sorts of tree management techniques we could be suggested. And I think, speaking without him being here, but I think he would certainly agree that that tree does need some remedial works to improve the situation and the relationship with the garden. Although that isn't the question that's being asked tonight. Being asked is whether we should keep the tree and preserve it. But yes, I mean he would certainly take a view and consider what the householder's requirements are. And consider an appropriate level of surgery. I mean, sometimes it's not as much as what the householder will want. You have to consider sometimes doing works in stages. If you take too much off a tree, you can kill it. So sometimes these things have to be managed for their setting, and it can take maybe a couple of cuts before it perhaps is a suitable size. But that is something that would be considered through any application if that were made.
Thank you, Jean. Councillor Bidwell?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would agree with Councillor Jarrett's sentiment. I think it's a difficult one in that it'd be unfortunate to fell, such a beautiful tree. But I think when we're thinking about, we're looking at the aesthetic. Okay, fair enough. We can make it a bit smaller through work. But if we're thinking about, the damage that it has caused and if it does use so much water and such, and the roots underneath the ruining shed, I think when people have the right to have their own beautiful garden and live the life they want to live it, why should that be allowed to impact that? I think so. That's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor?
Sorry, it's not really a question. It is a lovely oak tree. It's got an estimated 100 years left of life within it, and the TPO does not stop work being done. It doesn't stop the lower branches being removed to raise the crown. It doesn't stop work being done at the top. And I fear that if we say, oh, well, this is sucking up water and affecting a shed or whatever, then a lot of people around Crawley will then say, well, they didn't have a TPO on that tree. We shouldn't be having TPOs on our tree either. And I really think that we should do as much as we can to protect our trees. And this is to protect it from being felled. It's not protecting it from work being done. And as the officer said, planning officer, the tree department will give advice, will suggest things that can be done to the tree to keep it healthy, but to protect further damage that it may do in the future. And work can be done this time, and then in a few years' time more work can be done. And I think to have the committee, to have the council have oversight of the tree is a good thing, and it protects the future of our trees. Otherwise, other people are just going to be chopping them down without any thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jaggard. I just want to add something as well. I mean, I really do understand your frustration, Miss Dunster, because I also have in my neighbour's garden, like right next to me in the front garden, they have a huge tree, and it's actually a pine tree as well. And especially when it's windy, I have all those kind of needle-like leaves in my front garden, in my back garden, over the ceiling, and they're going to it makes such a mess. And I'm forever cleaning it up. But it's a tree, it's a protected tree. It's not protected, but I mean, I've been told, by the neighbours, as it's a private property, that they can't cut it down. It's a private property, and trees are valuable. I mean, I understand, because I love greenery as well. So, I mean, it's a shame, really. I mean, because it's a lovely tree. It's so full of greenery and everything. I mean, I would say, have it trimmed regularly, actually. I mean, like the planning officers and all the councillors suggested. I think it's best to have it trimmed as much as you can, often as you can, and then you have plenty of light and everything coming into your house, and it won't be such a bother as it's bothering you now.
Sorry, if I can just jump in here. I think that our constitution allows questions of clarification from the committee members to...
Yes, Councillor Bidwell, if you make it quick, please.
I'm not sure if that's already been asked, but would putting the TPO on it, would being able to crown it and do this work, would it mitigate damage? Would it actually have any effects on the damage currently being caused, or would it not make a difference?
I'll let Jean answer that question. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, we do get applications for tree works for and alleging damage. It depends. I'm not the tree officer. I'm not going to get drawn into whether it would mitigate this particular thing. We'd have to see evidence of the damage, and sometimes applications come into the council for sort of subsidence claims for trees where trees have got a bit, protected trees have got rather large, or there's problems with subsidence or movement. Obviously, we have to look at those really carefully, and in times, if the evidence is there that there's real damage, monetary, and it's a significant amount, then that might justify taking a large tree out if it's causing damage to a property, if there's an insurance claim. But as I say, there isn't, a lightweight shed perhaps isn't substantial enough damage in that sense. It doesn't have any footings, but certainly for other sort of trees where there is damage maybe to the buildings itself, then yes, we would look very carefully at that as part of any application.
Thank you. Now, as everyone had a chance to put their point of view forward, we will move on to the vote. The recommendation is to confirm the TPO. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I please ask the vice chair to second, please?
Seconded.
So could I please have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. All those against? And all those abstaining? So TPO 01/2025 has been confirmed. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 5, Tree Preservation Order Application CR/2025-0073/TPO, Amenity land adjacent to rear garden of 35A Westfield Road, West Green. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. So this is agenda item 5, and the location of this particular tree, which is an oak tree, is to the rear of 35A Westfield Road in West Green, and is shown on the screen behind you, or above. The works which consent is sought is for the removal of dead wood from the tree, which it actually doesn't require consent, but it's been added for completeness, and then the removal of the basal epicormic growth to the main crown bake. It's rather a technical jargon, so I'll show you on a photograph what that is. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong button. Sorry, move to SharePoint, and I'm still struggling with the new buttons a bit. There we are. Right. Okay, so this is the tree in question, it's the oak tree. And the basal epicormic growth is all the growth which is under the crown breaks. The crown breaks about where my cursor is. And the epicormic growth is all the sort of stuff that's sprouted out from the crown downwards. So they're asking to clear the stem effectively, and that's to allow the tree to be properly inspected at the base. It will also help clear the space around the footpath here, and will have minimum effect on the visual appearance of the tree. So the recommendation is to grant consent for that.
Thank you. There are no speakers registered in regard to this item, so we'll move on to the debate. Committee members should raise their hand if they wish to speak. The officer will respond to queries one by one. And I open the floor to debate. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Russell.
I think this looks eminently sensible and it has my full support.
Anybody else? Thank you. So that was quite quick. So we will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to consent. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I please ask the vice chair to second, please?
I second it.
Thank you. Please, could I have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. Application CR/2025-0073 TPO has been granted for consent. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6, Tree Preservation Order Application CR 2025-0198/TPO Amenity Land adjacent to rear garden 35 Westfield Road, West Green. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. For those of you eagle-eyed, should have spotted it's the same tree. What's happened here is that the works were initially applied for the sort of clearance of the lower part of the tree, but they've also managed now to climb this tree and have a look at the top of the crown to see whether there's any works needed to the upper part of it, and the subsequent application is a result of that. So there is a slight error in the report at paragraph 4.2, where it says that the works are for the removal of the dead wood and epicormic growth. That's from the earlier report, so it should be for a crown reduction to the height and lateral spreads by a maximum of 2 metres and the removal of some split limbs. So again, I'll show you some photographs to illustrate what's been discovered. So someone's been up, and this is again a council tree, someone's been up and climbed that tree and has found some split limbs within the crown which need to be taken down for safety reasons. There's one there, and a bigger one here. Again, you can see that's quite structurally weak now and needs to be removed. And whilst doing those works, there's also a need to reshape the tree to make it more contained. It's sort of spread out and got quite bushy. So again, this is for an overall crown reduction, 2 metres all the way around, to reshape the tree. It'll have fairly limited impact on its visual amenity, but it will help it appear more contained and be safer in its location. Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no speakers registered again for this item, we will move on to the debate. Committee members should raise their hands if they wish to speak. The officers will respond to queries one by one. Any members wishing to make a comment? Thank you. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to consent. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the vice chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. So application CR/2025-0198/TPO has been granted consent. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 7, Tree Preservation Order Application CR/2025-0294/TPO at 7 Meadowlands, West Green. Please can the planning officer introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This tree is an ash tree located to the rear of 5 and 7 Meadowlands in West Green, and location is shown on the screen. It's a large specimen with a good form and crown. We've had one update since the report was published, one comment received querying if the pollarding that was being proposed was in the interests of the tree or nearby residents, and suggesting that if the works don't benefit the tree, it should be left alone. Just to confirm, the works being done are for containment pruning, so it's maintained at a suitable size for its location. And I'll show you a couple of photos of the tree now. So this is the tree concerned, and this is the view from the garages. You see it's got quite a bushy crown, and it has been pollarded before in the past, and the recommendation is to take the cuts back to the original pollard points. This is a sort of arboricultural method that our tree officer considers is acceptable for this species of tree, and it will reduce the size of the crown and I say, make it a little bit more contained in relation to, or better shape in respect of the maisonettes behind it. So that's the view from over the garage block. And just to show the amenity value the other way, this is the view through the maisonettes. And the cut points, they are visible on the tree, but they haven't come up particularly clearly, the pollard points on the photographs, but there are clear cut points within the crown, which a tree surgeon would reduce it back to. And it's recommended that technique for managing the tree at a suitable size is consented. Thank you.
Thank you, June. As there are no speakers registered in regard to this item, we will move on to the debate. Committee members should raise their hand if they wish to speak. The officers will respond to queries one by one. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. I have no problem with this application at all. One thing that does concern me, is something that has concerned me for a number of years, is we're being asked to delegate decision to the Head of Economy and Planning until the consultation period concludes. Surely any comments made during that consultation period should be brought to this committee before the committee make a decision. I have no hesitation in voting for this thing, but it's something that shouldn't be happening, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Any other councillors wishing to make a...
Sorry, I'd just like to come back on to Councillor Pritchard on that particular point. There is some reason why we've asked for that in this case. Normally we do let the consultation periods lapse, but there is some urgency to getting this surgery carried out. Our Parks team are quite keen to appease the local resident in this case, and the next committee isn't till the end of August, so we did, as a favour to the tree officer in Parks, say that we try and get it onto the next agenda. Obviously there are just a few days left for consultation comments. If there was anything fundamental, we would perhaps bring it back to the committee if there was a problem with that, but generally speaking we don't get very many comments about tree work, so we felt it was proportionate to bring it to this committee and seek delegation to the head of service. Thank you.
Can I come back on that? Thank you very much. I can entirely understand the situation there, and I suppose it's not a massive issue. If it was a bit more contentious, I'd have a bigger problem with it.
Thank you, Jean, for your very thorough and good presentations on all of this. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to delegate the decision to consent to the Head of Economy and Planning. As the Chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mugabe. Now, please, may I have show of hands for all those for? Thank you. So the application CR/2025-0294/TPO has been delegated to the Head of Economy and Planning for consent. Item 9 is a new report to the committee which summarises the the decisions of recent planning appeals for information purposes. There is no decision to be made, so the recommendation is to note the report. Would committee members would like to make a comment or ask any questions? I don't know if you heard what I just said, Councillor Pritchard, but I mean, would you like to make any comments or ask any questions? Anybody? No? Thank you very much. So there's no supplemental agenda, so there's no business for the committee. The meeting is now closed at...
Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I have a question. I don't know whether it's for the committee generally or whether it's after the meeting, but this is the first meeting of the year. And previously we have made a decision as to the start time of meetings at this very first meeting, because most committees start at 7 p.m. This one is down tonight at 7:30, and we've usually made that decision based on the membership of the committee. And I wondered whether we were going to be discussing the start time of the meetings going forward. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. That is something that we have talked about the first meeting of each year, and I think the past 3, potentially 4 years, we've had that conversation, and the decision has been made to opt for 7:30. So it was included in the calendar of meetings this year automatically at 7:30. I'm more than happy if we'd like to take a vote on that again now, and we can adjust those meeting times for the rest of the year if there's feeling to moving those meetings to 7 o'clock. I believe that's something that we can do if you're happy with that approach, Chair.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so would members like to have the meeting starting at 7 o'clock? Councillor Russell, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, it's just an observation. I just wonder how many of us here are stand-ins, because it seems a little unfair that we can make a decision that binds the rest of the meeting. So whether that would be appropriate at the next meeting or not, I don't know.
I'll just jump in here and say, if everyone's happy to, we'll close the formal business of the meeting and then we can have this conversation after that. Okay. If you'd like to close the meeting then, Chair.
So the meeting is now closed at, what time is it?
8:25.
8:25. Thank you, everyone.